we're going to call out the engines. Here we go! Watching the wheels go round and round.
Ah yes, the All Aboard Live Tour. Thomas's first live stage performance show. Well, actually that goes to the Shining Time Station live. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Shining Time Station. We're here to talk about the history of the Big and All Aboard Live Tour. Because I think this tour does not get the attention it deserves. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Very special day on the train.
Now before I start talking about the beginning of the live tour, I would like to thank some people who helped me make this video. Those people being the Thomas and FR1, Thomas Aboard, Terrence Fan 02, Thomas and Friends, and Diesel here. Hey, who let you in here?
Never mind now. Why am I not on this list? Let me just... much better.
Okay, I might have to call the police because I have no idea how he got into my house, but I'll leave links to the people's profiles in the description and I'll mention them again in the end of the video, but so enough blabbering, let's get to the beginning. Okay, I don't know how to start this other than saying one day in early 2002, Hit Entertainment decided, hey, let's make a live theater show. Not just any live theater show, a live tour of Thomas the Tank Engine. But they needed to find a company that is willing to do it. They asked many and most of them backed out because they thought it would be too complicated. Until they asked Chris Reynolds, in which he accepted since he's been involved with complicated engineer type builds before, a lot in fact. And then DC Entertainment and Telltale Productions came in to help produce the show. And Fuji Television, they only helped produce the Japan tour. And speaking of tour, they only toured the UK in 2002, 3, 4, and 6, and they toured Japan in 2005. They were planning to tour Australia, but that got cancelled and replaced with Thomas Saves the Day. This means the tour could have gone on till 2007 instead of 2006. And I think that's it for this section since they started to tour in December 26 in 2002. So hoping I didn't forget anything, let's move on to the buildings and arenas. Okay, so we're not gonna be talking about the arenas because that is just where the tour is being hosted. But we will be talking about the stage, aka the track layout. We're going to be mostly talking about how it works because then there is not that much information on how this whole stage was built. Starting off with the differences between the All Aboard Live Tour and the Big Live Tour. In early rehearsals of the Big Live Tour, the Tidmus logo in the shed where Jack would come out of is missing, but that was later added on in official showings. And now to list off things the Big Live Tour had, but the All Aboard Live Tour didn't. This station with a footbridge, this little set of stairs, and these set of buffers. And it's kinda weird because in early rehearsals you can clearly see they used the All Aboard Live Tour set of buffers, but ended up using a regular design for the buffers. My guess is they swapped them out each tour. And those are the things the All Aboard Live Tour doesn't have. And now to see what the All Aboard Live Tour and the Big Live Tour have in common. This little bench, this railroad crossing, and basically everything else is the same, besides just the station is gone and there's just a big empty hole. Not empty, a hole full of random props. And now, for the switches. I spent too long trying to figure out how these switches works, and it was just a simple answer. Let me move the camera angle a little bit to the left. That's how the switches work. They are done manually. so the driver could come out of Thomas's cab and switch the points for him, or the points are already set when they go to the next act. And now, you're probably wondering, what does backstage look like? Well, to answer that, this is the only picture we have of it. But I did make a mock-up of how it would have looked like. Now, the way they would turn the engines around, it's beyond me. I don't know how they do that. Like right here, Percy is facing to the right. And right here, Percy is facing to the left. I hope that made sense because there is no other way I could have explained it. And in this area, that's where the rolling stock would go, like Annie and Clarabelle or the Troublesome Trucks. I put them there because only Thomas pulls the trucks in Annie and Clarabelle. And keep in mind, this is only a mock-up, not the actual backstage. And with that, we're finally done with the stage. Now we can move on to the engines themselves. Ooh, in this part, this is gonna be a very lengthy part because I'm gonna have to go over how these engines work. But before I do that, we gotta go over the other props, like the ones that only appeared in the big live tour. Those being Jack, and this is the only clear picture we have of his face, Harold, and the Troublesome Trucks. But their chassis would be reused for Annie and Clarabelle in the All Aboard live tour. And I believe the bodies for Harold, Jack, and the Troublesome Trucks were made out of like fiberglass, while Annie and Clarabelle were made out of wood. And here are some behind the scenes pictures of Jack, because why not? And a picture of how Annie and Clarabelle / the Troublesome Trucks chassis look like. And now we can move on to the engines, starting off with Thomas and Percy. A couple of things that every engine will have in common is the fiberglass bodies and
latex foam
faces. Thomas and Percy both have the same type of chassis, which is this one. And the control panel, they all have the same control panel, except Gordon. He can't move by himself, but he can puff steam and change his expressions. And speaking of expressions, they each have 6, as shown in the control panel. Neutral, happy, sad, surprised, angry, and sleep. I actually made face sheets for every character. And if you're wondering why it says edit on some of the pictures, it's because I could not find a single picture for that specific expression, so I had to edit one myself. Except Gordon, I managed to find all of his expressions. I know I was supposed to be talking about Thomas and Percy first, but let's talk about the control panel. We already talked about the buttons that change the expressions, but let's talk about the other buttons. There's a power on button, a button for eye movement, buttons for different smoke effects, an emergency brake, a switch for forward and reverse movement, and a switch for left and right steering. And now we can finally talk about Thomas and Percy, starting off with Thomas. Like the other engines, they first started with sculpting the face. Then they would make molds out of those sculpts and pour in some latex foam, and boom, you got train faces. Then they built the animatronics for the faces, made a fiberglass face to put over the animatronics, and then put the latex foam on it. Then they would make a fiberglass body, put some electronics in it, and put it on a chassis. This is how the chassis works. These wheels are for steering, like regular wheels, forward, backward, left, right. Then there are these wheels. These wheels are here to help the engine go smoother on the track and around the bends. And you might be wondering, how do the outside wheels work? Since they're not touching the ground, how are they gonna move? When these wheels move, the outside wheels also move. If it's going forwards, the wheels go forward. If it's going backwards, the wheels go backwards. And they also have a smoke unit under the chassis. And that's all you need to know about this chassis. Percy also has the same chassis, so I will not be going over this again. Except for James, he has a unique chassis, but we'll get to that later. Man, I didn't realize Thomas and Percy basically work the same way. The only differences being the face, the body, and the wheels. And Percy had the accurate piston wheel, whatever it's called. That means that every now and then it will get jammed, and it'll look like Percy sliding on ice. And that's all for Thomas and Percy. And I forgot, they do a little waddle as they move, and I find that adorable, and I don't know why. Now, let's move on to
some fun facts with me. Did you know there was supposed to be a mini Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle in the background near the windmill? But the only proof of this is this weird Lego Ideas set, where in the description it says, I don't know how to read. And there's some fun facts with me. I'm gonna go find some more fun facts. Bye!
Well, I did not know that. Maybe I should do a fun fact. Did you know that the live tour was supposed to get a return, but this time their faces would be projected on TV screen instead of latex faces? But this was scrapped because it would have been way too expensive. I mean, it would have been doable, but expensive. I don't remember how much it costed to make each engine, but I can recall it was somewhere in the 1,000 area. And now let's move on to Gordon. He's the shortest of them all. Why, you may ask? They only made part of him, as he would be too big to go around the bends. So he would only pop out from the shed and go back in if he needs to do something like pull the express. And since Gordon didn't have a motor, he would be pushed around like a cart. But he can still puff steam and change his expressions, as I said before, and also move his eyes. And now let's talk about the biggest one of them all, James. He is 652 centimeters long and weighs 1.5 tons. That earned him a spot in the 2004 Guinness World Book of Records as the largest model railroad engine. And now let's see how they got James through those sharp curves, since we already talked about what they're made of and the control panels. Here's what James looks like, and here's his chassis. I believe it's called a scissor hinge mechanism and pneumatic steering. I don't know what any of that means, but it helped James go through sharp curves. And here's something extra that I should have mentioned in the beginning. Harold is pulled by a string on the top of the arena and has a working lamp. And Jack could be driven from the inside. Or maybe he was remote controlled, I don't know. And that is it on how they built the engines and props. And now we can finally move on to the tours, starting off with the Big Live Tour. The Big Live Tour began in the 26th of December 2002 and ended in the 6th of April 2003. Ian Lackland was the director and writer of the tour, as well as Will Brenton. Same goes for the All Aboard Live Tour. The songs for both tours were composed by Barry Bignall and they were both narrated by Ray Burnside. And the show would have a runtime of 90 minutes, so an hour and 30 minutes. And the characters included in the Big Live Tour were Thomas, Gordon, James, Percy, the Troublesome Trucks, Jack, Harold, Sir Topham Hatt, Mrs. Martin, Josh, Jenny, and the Mayoress. And the characters that were only mentioned in the Big Live Tour were Henry, Donald, Douglas, and Bertie. And the locations in the Big Live Tour were Tidmouth Sheds, the Tunnels, Station with a Footbridge, the Level Crossing, the Windmill, Brendam Docks, and Farquhar Quarry. The Act 1 songs for the Big Live Tour were Another Busy Day on the Trains, It's Great to Be an Engine, A Job for Jack, and I'm Not a Useful Engine Anymore. The Act 2 songs included Where's Thomas, Night Train with different lyrics, and A Very Special Day on the Trains. Now for the story of the Big Live Tour. This is true for both tours. They always start with a busy day on the trains and then proceed to Act 1. Thomas was being constantly told off for being late and James and Gordon were teasing him about it. But Percy, being the good friend he is, tries to defend Thomas. But Thomas thinks that he's not a useful engine anymore and so he runs away from Sodor. And now we're transitioning to Act 2. The next day, the engines found out that Thomas ran away. Feeling guilty, James, Percy, and Gordon go out to search for Thomas. But as they go into the tunnel, they get trapped inside by some falling rocks. Harold goes out to alert Thomas and Jack that the engines are trapped. And then Thomas and Jack go out to save the engines from the tunnel. Thomas is called a really useful engine again, and end of act. And there's yet to be a full recording of the show, and I really hope one gets found soon. And the only footage there is of the Big Live Tour is by Terrier55 Stepney. And now for a fun fact. The first Big Life tour poster marks the last appearance of Thomas's original laughing face.
Hey, I'm the one doing the fun facts here. Did you know a poster for the Big Life tour can be seen on a double-decker bus in the movie Love Actually? Now I'm gonna go find some more fun facts, so let me just...
Okay, as I call the police, let's move on to the All Aboard Live tour. The 2004 All Aboard Live tour began in the 27th of March and ended in the 16th of May. The show also ran for 90 minutes and it also had 2 acts. And all the characters appear again, minus Josh, Jenny, Harold, and Jack. Oh, and the Troublesome Trucks too. And the new characters are Annie and Clarabelle. They replaced the Troublesome Trucks. And they have a larger amount of songs. The songs included in Act 1 are Another Busy Day on the Trains, It's Great to Be an Engine, I'm Back on Track, which is a banger, Why Should I Stay, It's Great to Be an Engine, reprised, Another Busy Day on the Trains, reprised again. And the songs included for Act 2 are I'm Special, Thomas to the Rescue, Heave Ho, and Start the Parade. And that song is a banger also. And unlike the Big Live tour, there actually is a full recording of the All Aboard Live tour. So I recommend you watch that first or stay here and watch the summarized version of it. Act 1 begins with the Topham Hatt coming out and greeting everyone and saying it's a rather busy day. And then the song Another Busy Day on the Train plays. But this doesn't contribute to the story, so let's move on. So Topham Hatt has a cold, so he's sneezing and the engines come out to say bless you. And when all of them come out of the shed, the Topham Hatt tells them their jobs for the day. Gordon pulls the express, James has to pull some tar wagons, and Percy the mail. And then they go off to do their jobs as Another Busy Day on the Trains plays. And for the reveal that was more anticipating than Dream's face reveal. Oh my god, you see that? It's Thomas! Then the Topham Hatt tells him his job, which is pulling Annie and Clarabelle. Then it transitions to It's Great to Be an Engine. But at the end of the song, Thomas's whistle breaks. And once the Topham Hatt finds out about this, he is rather upset and is afraid this will cause confusion and delay. But Thomas brings out the idea of what if he borrows the school's bell, since that just rang and it's loud enough to be a whistle. So Topham Hatt agrees and It's Great to Be an Engine plays again, and you can clearly hear Thomas's whistle again work, but we're just gonna ignore that. And then Thomas asks Mrs. Martin if he could borrow the school's bell, in which she says yes. Thomas gets the bell attached to him and then goes off to do his duties. But then another problem has arisen. Gordon and the workers are now sick. So Sir Topham Hatt assigns Thomas to also pull the express, and to the other sick workers and Gordon to take a rest. And Thomas, being happy that he got to pull the express and is now pulling Annie and Clarabelle, he sings a song about it, and this song is a banger. Just listen to it. But Thomas keeps on ringing and ringing his bell, and that annoys the workers and Sir Topham Hatt. They scold him and tell him to only use the bell for emergencies, and Sir Topham Hatt sends him to his shed. Thomas has a sad musical number. Then he goes back to the shed and he smells smoke coming out of the Topham Hatt's office. He goes out to ring his bell as loud as he can, and before the workers can scold him, he tells them that there's a fire in Sir Topham Hatt's office. They alert Sir Topham Hatt, then they put out the fire and find out that Sir Topham Hatt burnt his tea cake. They thank Thomas for warning them about the fire, and then it's great to be an engine place once more. And then when they're all in the shed and it's nighttime, they start reminiscing of old times. Like when Thomas had a boiler full of fish and when Gordon got stuck up in the hill and Edward had to help him. And then Gordon brings up the story of the ghost train and that frightens Percy, but Thomas tells him not to worry, the ghost is fake, and then they go to the next day. So Topham Hatt, feeling much better, he wakes up the engines and tells them there's a parade arriving on Sodor. He tells Gordon to pull the express with the mayoress, James to collect the load from the docks, Percy to collect a special delivery, and Thomas to get decorated as he's going to lead the parade. And the engines go off to do their jobs. As Percy makes his way to Titmuss Station, he hears a scary whistle come from the tunnel, but it's only James. James is bragging about how special his load is, but Percy tells him he's not pulling anything. But James being James, he doesn't listen and goes on. But then Percy hears another whistle that he is not familiar with, and this frightens him so much that he hits a pair of buffers and derails. And that's the end of Act 1. I'll cover Act 2 in the 2006 All Aboard Live tour since that's basically the same. So let's move on to the Japan tour. The Japan tour began in the 16th of July and ended in the 31st of August in 2005. It's the same as the All Aboard Live tour, it's just that it's been translated to Japanese and tiny changes have been made. Like how they have a smaller list of songs. The two returning songs are It's Great to Be an Engine and Heave Ho. And a new song that is exclusive to the Japan tour is Come for the Ride, the song that's playing right now. And something different about It's Great to Be an Engine in the Japan tour is that Thomas starts singing it, and I guess that then transitioned to like the whole crowd singing it. Here's an example.
ミュージカル「機関車トーマスと仲間たち」毎日全国からたくさんのお友達が
As you can see in the first clip, Thomas was singing it, and in the second clip, the whole crowd was singing it. Now you get what I mean. And there's no actual recording of the Japan tour, the only recording being the promo vids and the advertisements. So we don't know if they replaced Start the Parade with Come for the Ride. We just know Come for the Ride is a song through this promo vid. And another new thing in the Japan tour are these two characters. They don't have names, but they do appear in the Japan tour. And this was in the second act, where they find the elephant and stuff. And in the All Aboard Live tour, there were only two random workers. They didn't have like colorful outfits, they just regular workers. And then the song Heave Ho would play. And they did also have a parade, only this time all the engines are decorated, James, Percy and Thomas, as you can see right here. And I believe it also ran for 90 minutes and it basically had the same story. And I wonder how they got the models to Japan. Was it by boat or plane? Because Percy's model did break down in one of the shows and it had to be cancelled since he had to be repaired. And it was broadcasted in the show called The Punk Kikis as well in 2005. Not Percy breaking down, like the tour. And this was the name of the Japanese tour, translated to English. It was called Musical Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. I mean, it is a musical, so it does make sense. And I'm very glad the tour made it to Japan since Thomas is very popular there. And I think that's it for the Japan tour since everything else was the same, it was just translated to Japanese. They already had their voice cast since when Thomas came to Japan, all the engines had their own voices. And the only changes here were they removed a few songs and I think that's it. And they did have an arena that was dedicated only to the live tour. And I believe that's it for the Japan tour. Now we can move on to the last year of the tour, which is 2006. Now let's continue off where we left off, which is Act 2. It starts off with telling the audience that Percy is still derailed and no one has found him yet. Then it transitions to a musical number about being special, and while that's happening, they're decorating Thomas. And once they finish decorating Thomas, Sir Topham Hatt wonders where's Percy and James and tells Thomas to stay there, not to move a wheel until Percy and James arrive. And eventually James does arrive, saying that he has now arrived with a special delivery. But Thomas stops James and tells him, where's your delivery, man? Where is it? I see nothing. Now James has to go back to the docks since he thinks the trucks might have uncoupled themselves. And then James starts to wonder if he had the trucks when he saw Percy. And then Thomas asks, where's Percy? James tells him that he last saw Percy at Tidmouth, and Thomas says, well, he should have been here by now. Then Thomas asks the crowd if Percy's in danger, they say yes, and now Thomas goes off to find Percy, despite the Fat Controller's orders of him staying there and not moving a single wheel. Percy has been there all by himself for the longest time, and then Thomas eventually finds him. Yippee! Then they hear another spooky sound come from the tunnel, and Thomas goes to check what's been making those sounds in the tunnel. He then comes out of the tunnel unfazed and says that he found James's trucks. But that wasn't the only thing he found. He found what was inside James's special trucks. Nilly the elephant! And with the help of Thomas, Nilly, and the workers, they managed to get Percy back on track. But Nilly doesn't want to go because there's something else in the tunnel. Her daughter, Twinkle the elephant! And with all the problems solved, Percy goes to collect his special fireworks and everyone goes back to Tidmouth. And Sir Topham Hatt, feeling cross, is wondering why Thomas has ran off and where's Percy? And Thomas has arrived, and before he can say anything, Sir Topham Hatt scolds him, sends him to his shed, and tells him he's not leading the parade. But then they hear a scary whistle again, and Gordon thinks it's the ghost train. But Percy comes out to prove him wrong and saying it's only Nilly and Twinkle. And with Sir Topham Hatt learning that Thomas saved the day, he tells him he can lead it once again. And with the mayoress of Sodor, they both start the parade. They all celebrate the parade until it all has to end. And it ends with Thomas saying goodbye to the crowd and then going off into the tunnel. And that is the end of the tour. But that's not the only thing that happened in 2006. In June 25th, at the Queen's party at Buckingham Palace, Thomas's live toy model makes an appearance. Look, there he is! And I believe part of the set was brought since the fans' track and tunnel are there also. Not only that, but Thomas's model was temporarily given a new face. There's no reason why, but look, he has a new face. And it kinda reminds me of the Day Out with Thomas faces. See? And I believe that is it for the tour. The 2006 tour began on the 29th of July and ended in the 20th of August. And some of you might be thinking, hey, at least they preserved the props. Well, I have some bad news. Let's move on to 2018. For the longest time, we believed that these models were in storage and they were taking good care of them. And that was true for a while. That was until 2017, when these pictures popped up showing off the model's current conditions. It's sad to think that these models that brought so many smiles to kids are now like this. James has his face animatronics removed and his latex face laying on top of them. Percy looks alright, it's just that his number 6 has been spray painted over, and also the smoke box. And the reason why the numbers and names are sprayed over is because they were trying to de-Thomasify them, like remove the Thomas from them. And Harold? Oh boy, he looks revolting. He is missing his propellers and his face is discolored and I don't know what's on it, but I don't want to touch it either way. And Jack is also there. He's in pretty bad condition, but his face animatronics are there. And also Percy's lamp. Speaking of Percy, part of his eyebrow is missing and his right eye is broken. And the latex is starting to show its age. And parts of the stage are also there, even parts from the Big Live tour. And Gordon is the only one who's in the best condition. He even has his face. You just need to clean it up and it's good as new. They also have one of the coaches, but we don't know if it's Annie or Clarabelle. And these were all found in Greenham Nuclear in the UK. And then these models would be sold off on eBay in somewhere in 2019. Only Percy, a coach, and James, minus his face and tender, were actually sold. And you're probably wondering, why haven't you mentioned Thomas? Well, the thing about Thomas is, as of late 2018, his model was scrapped. Apparently he was supposed to be put on display on the Telltale Productions headquarters, but that fell through and he was sent with the other models to be cut up and destroyed. And there isn't a picture on how Thomas's condition looked like, but it's said to be that he was in pretty bad condition like the others. And I'm still wondering why Thomas's model was the first one to go. I mean, I'm happy the models are still around, but whether it's in bad condition or not, I wish the Thomas model was still here also. And now this song will hit much different now.
I'm not a useful engine anymore.
Now that we talked about how the models were in 2018, let's talk about how the models are doing now. So for the model's current state, we know Thomas is already gone. He is not on this earth anymore. And Gordon, Jack, Harold, we don't know. Like, they weren't sold in the eBay listing. Same with James's face and tender. For all we know, they could already be scrapped too. And as for James and Percy's model, they're still here. And you're wondering, who bought the James and Percy models? Well, that would be AG Tire Recycling, located in the UK. See, you can see Percy, James, and the coach right there. And no, they're not there to be broken up, they're there for the collection. As you can see right there, it says Waste Tire Collection. But I'm more worried about James and where he's placed because he's a pretty big model, and if a storm ever comes by, it might push him off and break his fiberglass body. He still holds his world record, so we can't lose this model, so hopefully they move him to a different area. And I think that's it for where the models are now. I'm sorry it was short, but we don't know where Gordon, Jack, or Harold are. So to help lighten the mood, let's go over the goofs of the tour. Let's start off with this obvious goof, which was from the actual live tour recording. As you can see there, Percy's wheels are frozen and he's just sliding. And now for the things the engines were missing. Percy is missing the red lining on his cylinder. James is missing his whistle. Gordon is not only missing his lamp irons, he is also missing his coupling. And the Troublesome trucks were missing the buffers and coupling. I don't know if you can see it here, but it's the best picture I could find. But the back buffers were a bit shorter than the front buffers. This is a pretty funny one. Apparently in early rehearsals, Thomas crashed into Percy. And yes, this is the actual image of it happening. I'm not sure how it happened, but at least the models weren't damaged. And with that, oh my god, I'm finally finished with this video. Oh my god. It took so long working. I'm in a closet right now recording this, and I've been standing here for hours. No, days, many days after school working on this video just to get it out. And thank god I made it to the end. It was fun making this video. I love researching about the tours. But I've been anticipating releasing this video, and now I can do that. Oh my god. And also, thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I never thought I would make it. So this will be your 1,000 subscribers special. And I would like to again thank everyone who helped with this video. I really appreciate it. And now without further ado, let's start the parade!
On we go!
Hey! let me out of here. Come on. Just let me out. I promise I'll be good. Just let me out.